Stevens in Al-Ain, UAE, talking with Ryan Buchanan on Learning Together for Sunday, it's the 7th of December. And we're just talking about how he got into digital technologies just recently, having come from China. And his mom and dad started giving him devices, which is really cool. And now he's just about to tell me the part of the story where he got to Saudi Arabia, and they've all got tablets there. So anyway, go ahead.
Right. So the digital, maybe the aged digital immigrants, just filling up my teacher's satchel with all these digital devices, which I didn't think that I would need. Of course, now that the things that you can't live without, if you fill out an account, and it's 5 things you can't live without: your phone and your tablet and things. Well, I came to China, or I came to Saudi Arabia. And inside the classroom, a lot of the students had their tablets, but for most of the teachers that had been in the classroom with the students, they were telling them to turn the tablets off. And I thought it was remarkable because I heard of Negroponte and 1 laptop for every child and 1 tablet for every child, and what a wonderful idea it was. But again, I'd been in sort of frozen technological status when I was in China for 5 years, and I didn't really want one. And so some things happened, and we had to go on a visa run, and I went back to America, and my dad had a hot new Nexus 10 tablet, and it's kind of built for the workshop. It's kind of got rubber. Actually, I've got it right here, but it's got a rubber, if you can see, kind of a matte, tough finish. I've dropped it all over the place, and it's really flexible or versatile. And so I ordered one too, and I got it last November, and I brought it back to Saudi Arabia with me in January. Sorry, my cat's eating my feet. I brought it back to Saudi Arabia with me, and the students were still using their tablets for Facebook in class and racing games, and one where they kind of like they shifted the tablet around in order to catch the ball in the right little slot. I don't know if you guys seen that. Of course, the Clash of Clans, Candy Crush, and all these other apps. I've got it low-teched up here on my wall. And the administration and my direct supervisor were very negative, and they were trying to cut some costs. Contract was up for review, and we were getting audited. And they said, we're going to get rid of the tablets. And I was like, well, that's crazy talk. Why would you get rid of the tablets? For one thing, our young men that are around 19 to 20, we're out here in the desert, and they really don't have anything to do. And you've been in Saudi Arabia, Vance, so you can corroborate that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if for no other reason, I wanted the students to have that. And I mentioned that to Christopher, my supervisor, and he said, that's not good enough. He's like, you got to give me a reason to tell one of these executive directors why we keep spending 1,000 rials a piece for tablets. So I wrote up a proposal and threw together 5 apps that I could definitely use in class. And I gave that proposal, and they went ahead. We had about 130 incoming students at that point, so they went ahead and spent 130,000 rials, which is, that's a decent output. So
yeah,
we got this.
We're talking about what, $600, something like that.
Let's see, about 300. So yeah, the devices. Each device is about 1,000 rials, and this is the newest version of what they're doing, the Lenovo one, which is also similar.
Oh, nice.
It's a 10-inch screen, 10.1, and it's actually, this is like a large phablet because it is actually a phone and a tablet. But that was kind of a bunch of money, and as far as bean counters are concerned, they could cut that down. 130,000 rials. That's quite a bit of money. I guess that's what in dollars. That's over $30,000. Mm-hmm. And as far as the administration was concerned, it was only being used for Facebook, maybe take pictures, possibly pictures and video of teachers. and I know it had been used for that.
Which teachers don't
and
like.
Some other, right.
Yeah.
God forbid the teaching process is transparent. Which is one of the things that I like, but I know not everybody likes it, and of course I'm a social butterfly. I like to be out. I want people to look at me, but not everyone does, and we're not all big public speakers. So I really got on that mission, and the upshot of all that was that I had to learn to use the tablet in order to keep it in the hands of my students, who I was sympathetic to because they really didn't have anything to do. So we were able to
keep. They're bored. You know, if you take their tablets away, they're bored, and then you're teaching them in traditional ways, and that's great for teachers who've been there a long time and they don't want to change. And they, like you said, they want to get the tablets out of the classroom. I mean, I was in Saudi Arabia long before these things would even have been tolerated or dreamed of, but even in UAE, you know, there's still has been mentality where, you know, when I went to my last situation, they had the students, a similar thing. When I got there, I was actually brought in to sort of try to do something about getting the students to use the devices they had, and they had just cut off the internet. They had just you know, blocked everything on the internet for the students. When I got there, I said, what are you talking about? Put it back, you know. And I convinced them that I could use it, but the pressure was to get it off from all the other teachers because the students were just going into their laptops. And you know, basically, like you said, the topic of your talk is getting behind the screen. You've got to. That's exactly my attitude. You've got to get into where they're staring, you know. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit. At the moment, we're supposed to have started about a minute ago, according to my clock. But you know, it's not really unusual for people to pop in. Maybe I would expect maybe 5 or 6 people are going to turn up in the next 15 minutes. But
okay.
But anyway, we'll tell us about why you're here and how are we going to get into the laptops where the students are staring.
Yeah, laptops, tablets, mobiles. For me, well, one of the things that I ask when I do my presentations, and I take my 8 tablets around the kingdom with me, I say, okay, I know there's a regulation in Saudi Arabia about having mobiles in class, and usually someone will shoot out, it's against the law, or it's sort of against educational regulations to have mobiles, okay, and then I ask, do the students use them? Do they have them in class? And of course is the answer. Yes, they do. So then that sets up sort of a competition or a battle, as some of my colleagues have phrased it, where some of us have even to the point of walking around with a box and saying, put your mobile in the box, which is just a really bad situation, and depending on what age you're teaching can be a really tense situation, because I teach men. They maybe 18, 19, 20, some as old as their late 20s. They're men, and I'm asking them to give up a device that they use, as far as they're concerned, as sort of life support, and you know, communicating with their family, communicating with their network, and also as digital natives. I've done a lot of research, question and answer stuff with a lot of my students. They think of that mobile as an extra limb. They think of it as part of them. And I think someone mentioned something in either the gamification webinar or another webinar that I was in that, excuse me, my cat is just tearing up my feet. Let's see, excuse me, let me go back. So as an extra limb, that if, just a moment. Get out of here. Okay. Oh, wow. I wondered if that would happen. That if I asked them to give up their mobile phone, it's for them, as far as getting information, their access to information. It's like tying a hand behind their back. And I've tried to corroborate this this research that I'd heard years ago back in the States, probably in 2002 or 2003, that children of the digital age, or the digital natives, or iGen, or whatever these guys are called, think of the internet as an extension of their brain. Now, as a teacher, as a student, as an academician, I think of the internet still, I'm changing, but I still think of the internet as an online global library, just Project Gutenberg, an amazing wealth of knowledge, the wealth of the world's knowledge at my fingertips, and that from that I can draw sort of an online university library. But they don't think of it that way. They think of it as WhatsApp and WeChat and Facebook. They think of it as apps, or Howard Gardner in his book The App Generation talked a lot about that, how their connectivity. So as I'm taking away his hand, and then because he thinks of it as part of his brain, removing part of his brain, for him that's really, what's the word, disarming, literally. And a lot, like Prensky and a lot of the other researchers and writers have talked about getting this response of engage me or enrage me. And I know that everyone who's asked a student, whether a teenager or young men at a vocational institution like I work at, could I have your cell phone, or even to the point of almost being rude, is put your cell phone away, turn it off, put it in your pocket, just forget about it.
Yeah, listen to me.
Yeah, you get the folded arms, and this is, they just, you don't even know these guys, and you're a little worried for your life, honestly. And you know, I'm not. You've probably been in the same situation, and
sure. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. You know, I mean, the people who ask their students to do that usually do it because they are lost with what to do with the device. You know, and so that sort of, as you say, I mean, you call it the digital immigrants and digital natives, and I actually like Prensky, and I like I think that metaphor is very useful. It started a great conversation, and I did mention in earlier correspondence that it has a lot of people debunk it a little bit because there's no research to really support that idea. So that, yeah, okay, I see that point too, but I do like the metaphor. It's kind of like Krashen's I+1. You know, it may, or Chomsky's black box. You know, these are metaphors that were possibly unfortunate for the people who created them, and they got them in trouble with the researchers. But still, it's a very useful metaphor. So, yeah, I agree there. But certainly, that's what you feel like when you walk into a classroom and the people are so distant from you because they are in a completely different virtual world than a lot of the people who are trying to teach them are in. And they realize that, and they do not like it. You know, so it's much better if you can find some ways to get them using their laptops or their phones or their iPads or whatever they have. Like, for example, I mean, with iPads, I think just bringing QR codes into the classroom, or with mobile devices too, you know, just brings the world. That's just a simple thing you can do. Just because they can then shoot that code, and then they can go to the place that you're trying to get them in, for example, Quizlet or something like that, or whatever you happen to be doing. So, yeah, and then there's also mashups. What do they call them? App Smash. App Smash. Yes, that's it. Yeah. So you were talking about Jurgen's network. I don't know if you saw Joe Dale on that one, but he did a really great presentation on app smashing. And of course, there's quite a lot about that anyway. But that's basically, I think, how you use one really good way to picture how you use these devices is you try to. Sometimes you have to. It's not like a PC where you can sort of put something in the files and then you go get it with another program and bring it out. It doesn't work that way. You have to, you know, upload it to a space where another app can get at it. So these things kind of go together in that way. But once you've got the hang of it, then you can get students to do projects and be very creative, and they really like that. And that's, I suppose, where you start engaging them, where you really start teaching them. Because these things, since they don't work smoothly, you have to be familiar with how they work, which a lot of your colleagues might not be. But if you are, then, or if you can help your colleagues to become familiar, then you get students who start thinking in that way. And then, of course, their critical skills, their digital literacies are improving. Everybody's digital literacies are improving. Everyone is challenged. People are creative. They start bringing themselves out. They start communicating. The communication becomes about the device itself. How do I do this? What do I do now? Oh gosh, my student, you just showed me. I didn't know that did that. Wow, you taught me. This is that happens all the time. So,
and a great way to build rapport. It's so helpful for us because it's, as you know, teaching out here, there's not a great rapport. In fact, there's a hazing of a lot of the Westerners that come in to come and teach, and a lot of them split pretty quick. There's a pretty high attrition for teachers. A good way to build rapport is to let them teach you. Be teachable. Which I don't think that a lot of teachers, and honestly, I think that we've forgotten, but we're definitely on the learning side of this, and I agree that it's really good to be familiar with it. But like I say, I'm no expert in this, and by the time I'd gotten my tablet, most of the students had their tablets for a year. In fact, an interesting anecdote was, myself and my direct supervisor at that point were trying to figure out how they could get online, how they could use their tablets productively and be online using the school's limited broadband bandwidth. And it was interesting. We couldn't figure out how to put 130 new devices online and not, put a bottleneck in that bandwidth and just nobody getting any access. And I went into I go into class, and of course, stubborn as some students are, I would say, okay, open up your Miriam Webster. We're going to use it for a word search or a simple, look up a word and use speech to text. And they would say, teacher, no internet. And interesting, I'd say, okay, I know that it is. Later on, I cured that ill by getting my own Wi-Fi router and bringing that to class, which can hold up to 40 students. That's what I use now. But at that point, they're saying, well, you've got the device, but it's not useful because it cannot connect to the internet. And it was interesting. I said, okay, fine, let's go back to using PowerPoints, on the projector, the Epson projector technology in class, which is just, it's an overhead projector on steroids, on technology steroids. For me, not necessarily technology in the classroom. Well, later on that class period, I saw one of the students playing Clash of Clans on silent mode, and I said, you have to be online, right, for that? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, how are you online and nobody else is online? And I wasn't even aware, of course, that they could put a data package on there. Of course, I had gotten my own first smartphone and tablet less than a year earlier, but because a lot of the tablets are phablets, they can get a data package. Also, one of the students showed me that you could siphon the internet. And I don't know if that's legal or illegal. It sounds like an illegal process to me, but they knew how to get online when I didn't. And I found that one of the first things that I did was we wanted to do some projects, but I wanted them to use their tablets to do projects. So they were going to be video projects. And the students app smashed. They don't even, I guess the term probably came from, I don't know if it came academically or on the techie side. Hello, Teresa, welcome. That the term app smash, the students were app smashing anyways. They were using their video, they were taking pictures, they were using different devices, and they were putting it together into a video project that we figured out how to use a YouTube channel and upload those. And I've got over 30 different videos that students have created, which are just really fun stuff. So sort of not as a contradiction, but just as a parry into something else. I don't think that the teachers need to know really how to use them. They certainly don't need to be experts or IT people. I think what they need to do is be aware of what is possible with an app, with the Miriam Webster speech to text, using a video camera and YouTube. The students already know how to do it, and again, we can build a rapport by teaching them.
Let's welcome Teresa to our to our hangout. And Teresa, how are you? Have you got your mic working?
Can you?
Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can hear you.
Great, Ryan.
Hi,
nice to meet you. Hello, I'm in Portugal,
Nice
in the Lisbon area.
Oh, very cool.
It's a wonderful sunny day. Okay,
Always
I don't want
sunny
to
here.
interrupt. I don't want to interrupt. Please continue,
No,
Ryan.
no.
I've been listening for the past 5 or 7 minutes, and I'll continue. Okay?
Yeah, I noticed it told us we had a couple of viewers down here. There's a little indicator I hadn't noticed before. Now this says no viewers, but Robert Walkman was with us. I don't know if he's still.
Yes, I saw him in
listening.
a chat wing. Chat, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, if he's there, Robert, can you send something in the chat wing, because I have a special invitation for you, but it's only if you're still here. Okay. Anyway, as we were saying, so you were saying that you were talking about the Miriam Webster app, and you said that's been effective for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
One of the things that I really wanted to implement in class was the use of speech to text. Since I've been watching a lot of the TED Talks and even using some of those in class on YouTube or what have you, I was curious about Sugata Mitra, if you guys have heard that name, and his hole-in-the-wall studies. Good, of course, yeah. It surprises me. I mentioned that name around Saudi Arabia, and that they're not aware of this gentleman. Amazing research, and he's been using speech-to-text recognition for, well, almost 20 years now. 15, 16, 17 years. You were a granny, wonderful, in the granny cloud.
Well, actually, it was before the grannies, but then they started calling me Granny too, which was nice. So I think I took part for about 1.5 years with that program.
Wonderful.
Remember, Vance, when Sugata came to the webheads with the convergence?
Yes,
And then he asked for volunteers, and I volunteered, and that's when I started.
Okay.
This was like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've heard him talk about it on TED Talk.
2007 or something, yeah.
Great.
Okay. Sorry again for the interruption.
Oh, no, not an interruption at all. In case anybody who's listening to this doesn't know, a granny is sort of a tutor who Sugata Mitra thought that probably the best people to help other people learn were empathetic grannies who would obviously Teresa looks nothing like a granny, but in any event.
Oh, Robert's here.
Yeah, Robert is here. And Robert, the reason I was
Robert.
going to say, Robert said that he this wasn't really his what he does, but I really beg to differ with that. Hi, Robert. How are you? Because one of my first remembrances of Robert was he's designing some software, which anyway, basically it's sort of total physical response, because he's looking for something, and maybe you, the user of that software, could hand it to him. So you get to drag an object off the screen and hand it to Robert, who's on the screen, and all of a sudden a ball comes jumping in from off the screen. Oh, now he's got the ball, So
interesting.
I mean, yeah, it is interesting, and Robert, I think we're talking about engaging students through the other side of their screen, something you've been doing for quite a long time. Can you hear us, Robert?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
I can hear you. Welcome.
I had to plug in my headset, but it wasn't responding. So this is my built-in microphone, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, actually.
When you're not talking, just mute yourself. That'll work okay to cut down the echo.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want me to comment on that?
Sure. Yes, please do.
like, yeah, that's the software you're talking about was Live Action English Interactive, which I had a small part in designing, and the really neat part, which I don't know how, Larry Staten is actually the hands-on guy that did the magic to create it, and it's using Director, and yeah, I can't technically describe the tools, but all I can do is describe the effect that when yeah, you drag an object into the active window, the screen, and it morphs into live video, and it's pretty cool. It's not live video, but a video clip. That, you know, it's like you hand somebody. Well, in one of them, you hand somebody. She wants to brush her teeth, and so you have to grab the toothbrush, and then when you drag it into the window, she suddenly turns on the, uses it, puts the toothpaste on the brush and brushes her teeth. And yeah, with the one that I'm in, I guess was cleaning the house, and it's like scrub the sink with a sponge, and so there's all these different objects, and if you choose the right object, then it morphs into the video that shows me scrubbing the sink with a sponge. And yeah, that's sort of like how I always used to say we earned the term interactive, to call it live action interactive, because the user, the student, the learner, really became involved with the software.
And that was the key. To go back to Sugata Mitra and why we brought that up was that my first foray into speech-to-text in the classroom was just simply using the Miriam Webster app and seeing if the students could manifest that term on their tablet. Can you say the term and get the Miriam Webster app on the tablet to recognize your utterance? And the students were like, and I've used it all over in presentations. We've used it with a lot of people. I've done some research. How good is the Miriam Webster speech-to-text engine, which I think is backed by the Google speech-to-text engine, but I think the filter of Miriam Webster actually sort of dampens it. It's not as sharp as if you use like Hey Google and Google Now. I think that speech-to-text engine is just brilliant. But the students would spit out an utterance. They would say something like torque. And if you use my Miriam Webster app intro, after you'll see a video of the students trying to get the word torque. And the one thing that I thought was brilliant that I have never been able to really get students to do, whether I was teaching Koreans or Thai or Chinese over the years, and certainly not the young men here in Saudi Arabia, was to get them to be happy about drilling pronunciation. I'm not happy about it. It's sort of this banal exercise to, if I'm saying a word over and over again, whether it's madrasa or mustashfa in Arabic, or if I'm saying ni hao, ni hao, ni hao, it's not a pleasant exercise. But ironically, to get that utterance to manifest digitally on a tablet, people will continue with one word for up to 10 minutes. And have you seen that, by the way?
No.
To do it in Miriam Webster?
I don't know. Let me ask you: do you use speech to text to create a text message, or maybe create a document?
I never have. I know it's something that you're supposed to be able to do with Siri on an iPhone, and I have an old iPhone 4S, and I use Siri for some other things, but I've never been daring enough to have Siri actually send a text to somebody. But I should do it. I should just do it to my wife or something.
I will try it now.
Right. So he's talking about.
Okay, maybe not.
He's talking about Siri here on the iPad, and that has been a fun exercise too because it's like a little digital speech-to-text assistant or audio encyclopedia, navigator, what have you. She'll tell you where a close restaurant is. Interesting.
This is a test of dictate.
Right, and I only use text to speech on more of an experimental basis when preparing a workshop, you know, and to have that sort of app available for the participants.
Now, are you saying the speech to text or text to speech?
Text to speech. Text to speech, and I think I've used the other one, speech to text also. And it was funny because I have this recent group, we're only 6, and with Peggy, an American, we once tried one of those text to speech, and her name, as I pronounced it, Peggy, I don't know why, it came out as Geeky. Geeky, so now we call each other, I call her Geeky, and she calls me Decisive, because Teresa is how it came out, you know, as Decisive, and that's it. So those are our nicknames, you know, because of one of those apps.
Yeah, I think. Hello there. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Nina. How are you? We're just playing with our.
Hello, Nina.
Yeah, hi everybody.
I'm trying to get dictaphone to work here. It was working earlier. Anyway, sometimes it actually does work.
Well, I think what really I used speech to text and I showed that Sugata Mitra video to my students to guilt them into using speech to text. I said, look, here are some youngsters out in the wilds of India who have taught themselves English because they can't afford to go to school using only speech to text. And like Sugata said, he would just with his methodology, I don't know, talk to it till it understands you. And I said, surely if these young girls and young children can learn how to use English using speech to text, surely you can. And it was, I don't know if that sort of guilt trip to be able to get their digital device to recognize their utterances is what pitted them one against the other, as you'll see in the video that I'll give you a link to. But they will continue to drill that word until they get it. And I'll say, we did some research, and I wanted them to say the word 3 times, just 3 times, and tell me which attempt they got the correct answer, or if they got no correct answer, and what they got alternatively, like Decisive instead of Teresa, or if they got Geeky instead of Peggy, because that was some interesting research as well. That no one, including we had a control group of teachers, professors from India, America, Canada, South Africa, and England. No one would say it 3 times. They would say it like 15 times. In fact, continue to say it until it manifested, or give me a reason why the computer couldn't manifest theirs. And mine, I was like trying to calm them down. I'm like, don't worry. This Indian gentleman I was working with, I'm like, don't worry. It's created by, you know, Google. It's got a Google speech to text engine, so it's listening for a proper American, maybe Midwestern or Californian accent. And probably one of the reasons why we would get Geeky or Decisive if my students, right? My students, one of the words I use all the time is pump. Well, they get bomb. Because it's in Saudi Arabia. They have no P, but they have a B, so they get bomb, which can become an issue. But that's the determination to pronounce a word is far greater in my observation by using speech to text than by drilling it in class. And there's Siri, as Robert mentioned, using the iOS applications, or you can use the Google speech-to-text engine using any Android. Dragon, naturally speaking, I've even used that in my researching class. We'd have them recite things or do sort of like a mock ket test and see if the Dragon, naturally speaking, will recognize. And, you know, you do get random stuff, and which I think increases the fun. You know, if they say something like torque, and one of my students gets tired, and it's amazing the laughing and the relaxed nature of that drilling exercise versus the rolling your eyes when you say, okay, one by one now, screwdriver, screwdriver, screwdriver. Right?
Well, those speech-to-text things even make mistakes when native speakers are speaking at them. You get all kinds of weird things from autocorrect from my friends.
Yeah, they do, but less and less so, which is interesting.
It's calibrating, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, they've really improved quite a lot. I did some work with speech recognition, but it was the kind that I think it's called discrete speech recognition, which means that you tell it what to expect. It's like a phone routing system. They say if you want to pay in dollars, press say 1 or say dollar or something like that, you know, and then it recognizes that, because even a person in Indian will be recognized because it's working at the allophone level, and it knows it can distinguish what you are saying from a range of choices. But to go the other way around, to say something and then get the engine to actually put it back into English, that's really difficult. There's this, Teresa mentioned AuthorWay. We'll get her to tell us about it in a moment, but I've been playing with something called DictaNote, which lets you speak. I started playing with it on a PC, and it's sort of like a notepad, but you talk to it, and so as it creates what you say into the notepad, you also have the chance. It's like a word processor, because you can put your cursor anywhere and you can make corrections just like you do with any other word processor. So it's very fast if you want to produce speech and then get text from it. So I've been using. I started using it for transcriptions, but I like the way that Ryan suggests getting students to speak into it and see if they can come up with some correct English. You know, and then of course if they couldn't, they could. If you were getting bomb instead of hom or whatever, you could. Then they could correct it. So that would, they'd also learn from that way. They'd see distinctions in the letters that they're not catching. You know, the minimal pairs. They could play with the minimal pairs in that respect. And that, well, anyway, I was just showing you it on my Android phone because. It turns out there's an app, and the app is actually it's a really cool idea for making notes to yourself. You know, if you're driving along in the car, oh, I forgot to get eggs. Get eggs, you know, and or whatever, you know. But yeah. So it's a good way to just playing with it. I'm just checking. I just got it today, actually, the Android version. I've just been playing with it. And it really works very well, so it's probably something you could use. And maybe Teresa could tell us about AuthorWay, and I don't know, Ryan, you might have some things you want to tell us too about some of the things you were.
Vance, I can't say much about AuthorWay because I got it about 2 years ago or so, and I think I used it a couple of times and don't really remember. But I was just looking at the app. In the iPhone, and it allows you to speak, to see the result, to create a lesson, etc. So I think that if you look up, you know, Google AuthorWave, then you'll read more about it. But Ryan and Vance, you're both in the Arab world, right? And
yes.
Yeah. And my friend Geeky, Peggy, she has this book, this e-book, which may be useful to you. And I'm just looking at it. It's called American English for Arabic Speakers. She gave a presentation for Hala. Remember, Vance? You were part of it, I think. It's an ebook in Amazon, American English for Arabic Speakers. She's Peggy Tharp, Tharpe. Okay, so this may be useful. I don't know anything about Arabic, but I read the ebook and I found it very interesting because she's a pronunciation coach, and she knows a lot about it. She has her own system, and she's now writing one, I think, for Japanese speakers. Okay, so this is quite interesting. You may find it useful. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll look that up.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That reminds me of those old books for teaching pronunciation, like minimal pairs and pronunciation pairs that used to have. I think it was pronunciation pairs used to have a page of problems you should expect for like 20 different languages, which was useful. But this is a whole book for each language.
Yeah, that's yeah. Well, as far as the Saudi dialect, there's a lot of common mispronunciations, which it's good to get to a background on that. For one thing, you can just start understanding them a lot better. One thing that I wanted to go over is that commentary. What if they never get it? What if they never manifest the word that they keep on saying into their device, the torque? To me, as long as I can just affirm with them, I understand what you're saying. It doesn't really bother me that they don't get it, because again, you're getting a drilling that you could not reproduce in a classroom. I'm not going to get them to drill that word 10 times, and not with sheer and almost angry determination to get a digital device. It's a wonder that, to me, they're so determined to get that digital device to understand them, because they couldn't give a flying, they couldn't really care if they get me to understand it. Siri has to understand it, which is just miraculous. It's beyond me. Why do you want AI to understand it, but they don't care if I understand it?
I think it's an aspect of gamification. Interacting with this thing that makes them want to do it. I don't know.
Well, it's far more attractive than me.
Excuse me. Earlier in the discussion, somebody mentioned something, I think, about a device or software adapting to the user. And I know that supposedly exists, and I just wonder, it seems like in what you're talking about with pronunciation, that if there were software that adapts, that would certainly be advantageous to the individual, if it could adapt to a dialect or an accent. I know, I don't know if any of you have heard of Burlington English, which is a definitely not for free proprietary online English teaching. They profess to teach everything. I had a free demo account for a couple of years, actually, when I was in California at community college, and the thing that they pride themselves in is that they say Burlington listens and corrects, and it's the program actually does. They've got some kind of miraculous speech engine or something that interprets and adapts, at least somewhat, to the user. However, I was sort of a pronunciation specialist for a few years, and became very concentrated on pushing suprasegmentals, stress and intonation, and the software didn't handle that. It handles sounds, but supposedly it does adapt to the user. They say it takes like 30 minutes or something of use. And I don't know how they do it, but students loved it because they get immediate feedback. They had in front of them, they'd be reading either words or phrase or sentence, and the software would tell them visually. There'd be some kind of green line indicator if they really got it correct. It would sort of be gray if it's sort of so-so, and it would be red if it was really not acceptable.
And what software was that?
I'm sorry?
What software was that?
It's a web-based program service company called Burlington English. It's
that's
actually
it's not free. Yeah.
Headquartered. No, it's not free. It costs bucks. But anybody, probably you can still get like trial basis accounts and try it for a semester or something, and it's interesting.
Well, I think there's two things that got mentioned. One is gamification, and the other is adaptation. Both of these are very important. The thing about a game is you have to play it correctly, and teachers are very adaptable. Teachers adapt to students too much. So that's why it's not that they don't care about reaching Ryan. It's just that they can too easily get him to adapt, so they don't have to try. But if you're faced with an algorithm, that algorithm is not going to adapt like Ryan does, and then they've got to get it, and that's where it becomes a game, it becomes a puzzle, it becomes something that they'll work at, whereas they won't work for Brian or for Ryan. Ryan is only going to pretend he doesn't understand the difference between ship and sheep. Or he can understand it from context or whatever. It really isn't important. But if you're really trying to get the speech recognition engine to write a letter for you, and you want to say ship, and it keeps writing sheep, well, okay, you might work on it a little bit. Oh, there's Dave Wexler. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Dave from New Jersey.
He's mumbling.
He looks frozen to me.
No.
Nope. Not frozen.
It's being quiet.
Talking today. He's got a mic. I'm still remembering the TESOL conference in Philadelphia where Dave gave me a ride to the bus. Thanks. I will never forget. It was so nice.
You're welcome.
Well, Ryan, if you want to talk about Miriam Webster or how you use these materials in class more specifically, we're all ears. We'd love to hear more about it.
I would love to hear about that.
Mm-hmm. Ryan is he's muted right now, and he looks like his bandwidth might. Oh, is he back?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a link. It looks like this is the shared link. This is a Prezi. One thing that I'm doing with these different apps is I'm creating a packaged presentation including introduction and description and demo and a lesson plan delivery on how to use each one of these apps. That one that I just popped in, that is the one for Miriam Webster. I've also got one at this point for Quizlet, if anyone's used Quizlet, and also for Simple Different Website Builder. And there's 4 to 5 little videos, meaning not around 30 seconds to 2.5, 3 minutes in each of those procedures. Intro, demo, how to, and then finally a lesson plan delivery or lesson plan procedure type thing that I use Quizlet in my own little app smash to present that. That one, let me give you the links if you're interested in those. And if you'd like to, we could walk through one of those right now, or you can wait and do it on your own time at your leisure, and we can just simply talk about it. It's up to you guys.
Just want to say that at learningtogether.net, I think those links are up there. I was just putting them there when we started our little chat today, so I haven't really looked at the site, but you could have a look and see. I moved things from learningtogether.pbworks.com up to learningtogether.net. That's how I archive these materials, but they're in both places. So I think that's one of the links we put there, right?
One of the links that is up there is Quizlet, and that was the first one that I did. Let me add. I think that link that I gave you was the link for
Miriam Webster.
Yeah, that was the Miriam Webster, and that is the independent link. You can do it anytime you want. Let me pull up the Simple Different. Simple Different is just a wonderful website builder that, for me, I think is as easy to manipulate, and for the students to build their own website, which can be an e-portfolio, as easy as PowerPoint. You can literally log into it, register a name for your website, and publish your website within 5 minutes. And here's the link for that. Let me just make sure that, okay. That one is Simple Different. And here's the Quizlet one. Maybe I should title these Quizlet.
I'm putting these into the chat link.
Okay.
That's kind of you.
Thank you, Nina.
I'm putting them into my browser, and I'll make sure that they're all in the show notes at learningtogether.net.
So that last one, that's also a Prezi, is the Quizlet?
Yeah, these are tutorials that he's made. The Prezis show the videos, and then as you do the Prezi, it walks you through the videos, and then you can play the videos and you can see how the tutorials go. I think that's what you've done, right, Ryan?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Let me screen share one of them right now with you, just to give. I won't walk through it because it's the videos, but we can get an idea from this one. Here's the one, the Quizlet, quick Quizlet, that is available at the Learning Together link, and that you can navigate using those links that I've given you on your own at your free time, in your free time. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So here, this is the first video, and I've done a cheesy little American hi, good afternoon, and this is the intro. What can you do with Quizlet? And it's a digital flashcard app. And then again, here's the demo, and you can see the screenshot. It has a little matching game with a timer. The students actually will do this. 18, 19, 20-year-old men in Saudi Arabia will do this. So I imagine if they will do it, because they're the most stubborn. They're about the most stubborn of students I've met.
Yep.
Yep. And they
there.
And from my past presentation experience, apparently young females in Saudi Arabia are just as stubborn as well to give up.
No, not in my experience.
No? Okay.
The ones that come over here work really hard, are very smart for the most part, and they do what you assign. It's the young guys who don't understand the word homework or the necessity for it.
Teacher becomes teacher, teacher. Teacher. Yeah, can I somehow buy, is there some way that I can talk you into a grade? And they will,
Can I make up all my unfinished assignments the day before the final test? No.
Yeah. And this is and that has been the constant struggle when I first got here, and this idea about whether or not the students are cheating, and they say they're sharing, and how do I interest them? And the one thing that they have that they just really do not want to give up is is their digital interface. They must be allowed to have that, because that is their one thing at school that is still interesting to them. So if I can get on the other side of that through a Quizlet, for example, in that case, or through a drilling device or a drilling game with Miriam Webster, and/or would you like to build your own website? And I really try to sell it like, come on, you guys could use this for your personal business, or you could use it to share pictures with people. Use it, build a website. Don't you want to be Mohammed.com? You can make that, and some of my students have really gone with that. In the simple different package there, you go through the. I think that I've got some examples of some of the websites that students have created. If it's not there, I do have it at the Tablet Technology for Teacher Prezi, which is at the Learning Together post, and that's the one with the star field behind, and there's 5 apps, and it shows the step-by-step screenshots of how to build and register and publish a website. But some of them have really gone for it, which I think is really fun. And it's keeping their attention, and that's the key, because there was some years ago, I remember some news article that if you click on a web page and it doesn't load within 7 seconds, someone will click off. And that's what I feel like as a teacher in front of the classroom. If I don't keep clicking after 7 seconds, they're going to click off me, and it's going to be into Instagram, it's going to be into WhatsApp, it's going to be into their chats. I'll say that for me, it's been a great experience because I've tried to become more and more entertaining. When I was teaching in China, I was already the rock star, and I know you guys have heard that. Teaching in China, the first day of class, you walk into the room and they're like, "Wow, say," and you're the big foreigner in front of the classroom, so it was easy to keep their attention out there. But here, it is really, really difficult. So I know that they're looking at that side of the screen. There's no reason that I'm going to try to pull them away from it. Let's just put me onto that side of the screen. But one of the big issues that's come up in the presentations that I've given was, especially in Saudi Arabia, for possibly cultural or social reasons, is control. Control. How do I control what's on their tablet, what's on their iPhone, if I'm letting them use the iPhone? Any input on that?
Well, that's the big issue in the classroom, is control. And if we look at constructivist learning, who is supposed to be in control? Is the teacher supposed to be in control? Well, if you're teaching a language, does the teacher control what you say and what you think and what you therefore articulate? Well, not really. If in an ideal world, the learner controls what goes on. But of course, and that's I think that word control is the operable problem in so many classrooms. That if the students don't have the idea that they are in control, then they're not engaged. But of course, the management usually wants you to control the situation and sit them down at a test and get them to regurgitate something that has been controlled. So that's always the problem. But in a happy classroom, the students are in control. That's my opinion. Yeah,
but back to the challenge of controlling. Even though I agree with what you just said, Vance, but it just reminds me of 2 things. One is in computer lab that we had at the community college where I was teaching, we did have something, I forget what it's called, but you could actually force students to see, you can push your screen to them, and like all of their network computers show the same thing. Now, the question would be, is it possible to do that when people are, on Wi-Fi on their own devices, and they're not logged into a server necessarily? So I don't know, but I would guess that it might be, although I don't know. Probably not.
Well, I guess you have to ask, why would you have them all doing the same thing at one time? And the answer to that has to be that they're in a system that is going to assess them on that thing that you're trying to get them to do. And mature learners, the people that when we talk about MOOCs, we're getting a lot of feedback somewhere, by the way. What if I mute David? Or David, can you mute yourself?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so when we're talking about MOOCs, we're talking about people taking control of their own learning. Nobody goes into a MOOC and gets the same thing on his screen or her screen as everybody else gets. So that takes a certain kind of learner, a very mature learner, a learner who wants to learn and knows what they want to learn because they know what they need to know. So those are not generally the kinds of learners we get in our classrooms. But what Ryan is talking about, I think, is learners who know what they like and what they don't like, and so you have to kind of give them the idea that they're getting to do what they like. Is that kind of what you're trying to do, Ryan?
Yeah. I'm sort of on the fence about controlling the students. I've had administrators and fellow teachers, people come in for PDs and say, it's a battle out here. And you feel like you're in the war room, and someone's saying, they're going to try to cheat. We're going to do everything we can to catch them. They just conceive of information in a different way than we do. As Prensky mentions this in his book, he said knowledge is power. We worked our butts off to get our master's degree, our PhD, or whatever certificates that we hold. Now we're going to keep it close to the vest. I think that he points out something really poignant, and they don't think of knowledge as power. They think of sharing, or sharing is power, sharing is knowledge. And I guess of course we're doing it right here. And how that relates to control, I'm on the fence. Do we control them? And rather than like an old school type teaching, I'm going to control you. I'm the pitcher pouring into your cup. I'm pouring my knowledge into your cup. It's going to be birthed from you in the Socratic way. The knowledge is in you. Let me birth it out of you. Let me give you a question, for example, the Sugata Mitra was talking about, and you use your fingertips to stretch out into the cyberspace world, and you find that the answer to that question and create an app smash, whether it's a video project that you can upload on YouTube, or a PowerPoint, or a SlideShare, or a Prezi, or whatever you want to do it with. And as a teacher, we set a rigor and a standard, and what the standard is as far as what you can produce and what would be appropriate for class. I have no control out here. I'll be honest with you. If at any point, if 7 seconds goes by and the students are not entirely entertained with what's going on in the class, they'll leave for their mobile. And there's no point in a battle of trying to compete with their mobile, or God forbid, try to take away their mobile. So I just have to make my curriculum more attractive in the manner of gamification, as in Miriam Webster, or something with a digital interface. So any feedback on that?
So, Ryan, just a preliminary question that maybe I missed. Obviously, these people are in your class, and they're not really that interested in learning what you're presenting, or they're there because they have to be there, or what's the situation?
Yeah, good. That's a good question. They are 19 to 25. But it's more like a high school situation. They are being forced to be there. And they see the situation as a 2-year vocational school. It's just a hoop that they have to jump through. If if there's any way for them to get out of it, they would. Because of their contracts, they must be in class. And they, in my first experience coming in last spring, my first semester, I saw students that hated being there, and they hated me for being in front of the classroom. The only thing that they liked about their situation was that they were on a digital interface. And it was a very different situation. I just come from China, where they liked me in front of the classroom, and it was terrifying to be here. And I said, no, I don't care how much they pay in Saudi Arabia, I'm going to China. But I had to turn around and make it attractive, because it was a hazing process that I was going through. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, they take it easy on you. For the first 3 or 4 weeks, it's like this, and I'm like, how can you look at me like that? I just met you. I fear for my life. Come on, give me a break. And apparently it is a hazing process, and not a lot of young gentlemen actually make it through it. Our attrition, I came in with in about a month, about 20 teachers came in, and most of them from America. Most of those 20 that came in, there are only 2 Americans left a year and a half later out of that group. So it is rough, and the only way that I've found to keep them interested is using their mobile phones. And your tablets, if I can get the administration to pony up the dough and get the tablets out there in the classroom.
Vance, don't you think that Ryan should maybe discuss this sort of thing with Hala? She's also in, and with Lawan. They're in Saudi Arabia. And, they have a few years of experience. And I think she keeps her students motivated. Hala, she's in just a girl campus. Can you hear me?
I think that makes a difference. Just from what I have read and seen about men and women, the women in Saudi Arabia are very motivated to become educated. They are qualified for jobs that they are not yet allowed to actually take in most cases, because it means working together with men. But getting the education is for them the first step towards something more that they really want to have. What I understand just from what I have read, and also from some of my students at the University of Maryland in the intensive English program, is that the young Saudi men have a feeling of entitlement. They all want to be the boss. They don't want to go through the intermediate steps of being the subservient worker. And they are overwhelmingly not qualified for the jobs that they want. And the jobs that they are qualified for, they overwhelmingly don't want. I'm basically paraphrasing that from Karen House's excellent book. I think it's called On Saudi Arabia. I'm sure that you've read it.
I've been in the Middle East for a long time. I think I went to Saudi Arabia in 1976 and was there to 81, and then I came to Oman in 85 and was there till 85, and then I back in the UAE since 1997. So at the time that I came to the UAE, the language center we set up, they weren't going to allow internet there. By the time they set it up, which was probably a year later, we had internet everywhere. And that kind of change is, Ryan is in Saudi Arabia now. Really, I'm amazed at the progress that has been made there. I mean, they're actually talking about having the mobile phones in class. You wouldn't have allowed chat there when I set up, 5 years ago probably. Certainly in the last 10 years, just allowing people to go onto social networks. Twitter was blocked, for example, even in UAE it was blocked in 2003. That's when I started working at Petroleum Institute, and I remember I couldn't get Twitter I could get Plurk. Go figure. But for some reason, Twitter was just
I haven't
blocked.
figured that out yet.
Skype was blocked for such a long time. Anyway, but now everything is open. You know, they've stopped trying to block things. They're really trying to live with the situation and learn from it. And the people who are the doctors back with their PhDs, the people that Nina is talking about who aren't really planning to be subservient workers, they come directly back and they're in charge. Actually, those people are starting to get a little bit enlightened, or they're showing some enlightenment. You know, so the mindset is changing quite a bit. It's really fascinating to talk about Saudi Arabia, where students there can actually have a mobile device in the classroom. In fact, Ryan complained because he couldn't reach tiny URL. Hey, you want to come here? My granddaughter is here. That's okay. You can come in. It's my granddaughter. Yeah.
You're calling yourself?
No. I'm talking to these people down here.
You're calling yourself. I like that.
Yeah, I do that all the time. Anyway, yeah. So what was I saying? I was making a point.
That they have access to all these mobile devices and that they're changing.
Yes, but it was something in
particular.
Tiny
URL.
Yeah, the tiny URL. That's it. Yeah, tiny URL is still blocked in Saudi Arabia, but the sites the underlying sites are available. He can reach wikis. He's been going on learningtogether.net, .pbworks.com. This is something you couldn't have done, I don't think, 2 years ago. You know, so it's all changing. It's all getting much better. You know, you're really in an enlightened age there. You know, so.
Vance, can I ask? A few years ago, I was reading about alternate internets that were being built to keep people in repressive countries out of the worldwide internet. One of those places was Saudi Arabia. Maybe you or Ryan knows. Did that ever get off the ground, or did they just give up?
They've often had proxy servers. I don't know if Ryan, if you have to put a proxy. We don't have to do that in UAE anymore, but I remember we used to have to browse through a proxy server like they do in China. So if that's what you're talking about.
The internet's pretty open right now. There are some things that are blocked, but that's the same things that like a family would block in America. Most of the stuff is available unless it's something that possibly a regulatory body hasn't seen before. And I don't know if that was what the problem was with the tiny URL address. But it is pretty wide open now. Facebook, Twitter, all the social networks, and they possibly have just done that within the last year. I'm excited about the sharing of it, and I think it is growing really rapidly, their openness and their progressiveness as far as including those digital media in class.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what the I think in China they still control it quite a bit. You have to go through their internet in order to get out to the world, and if they don't allow it, there's the firewall there. But of course, people can install VPNs. You know.
Yeah.
So even we use that. We use that to get around Skype. Device to telephone, you know, so you can make telephone calls on Skype, or you know, you top it up for $10 every month or two, you know, so instead of going through the service providers.
Yeah, and the students know how to do that. They know far better.
That's what you were saying earlier. I think we started the recording, but basically before people got here, we were talking about how much you can learn from your students, that they know how to do. How to get through. For example, YouTube is blocked where I am. It's a bandwidth issue. It's not that they don't want you on YouTube, but all the teachers are aggravated because they can't get it. The students are all on it. Because of course they're using HTTPS, you know, and this is something the teachers don't necessarily know about. But you know, okay, so anyhow, it's not effective, it's not working, and the students know it. But you know that another thing you said, Ryan, you know that you are succeeding and engaging them when they share that with you. When they're not using that as a way around you, they're actually sharing it with you, so the two of you can work in partnership to improve the learning situation. That's a step. That's, I think, when you're starting to get on the other side of their screens.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate hearing that, because sometimes you're not sure, and I can recognize that when they're willing to say, because they'll say that to me, they'll say, well, here, I use the Siphon app, but don't tell anybody. Oh, I'm an insider now.
Yeah.
And it is. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. It is.
Well, I think that's the key is becoming an insider in their world and understanding how they learn, because their devices are how they learn. They may be unconscious that they're actually learning on it, but the teachers are. I think that the traditional method of teaching sees that as an impediment to learning or a distraction from learning, but it's not. If that's how they exchange information all day long, every day, and as soon as they come into classroom and I say, don't use that tool that you use to exchange information in my class. Use a pencil and paper. And so I'm preparing them for the past, not for the future. I'm like saying, this is how we did it in the past. I don't know how we're going to do it in the future, but I'm going to make you do it the same way that I did it, just because I earned my rite of passage using pen and pencil and the Dewey Decimal System. You have to too, which is just to me ludicrous. They don't even know what often I'll ask my students. They'll say, okay, you can do. Administrations will say you can use the tablets. They can keep e-journals, but they also have to keep a paper notebook and a hard journal as well. They don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to them. One of the apps that I use is Google Keep, and they can record everything on that. Or Evernote is really brilliant, and I saw that someone has done some presentations with that. Evernote is just brilliant. They can store everything. And it doesn't make any sense to them to use tools for the past. Sugata Mitra talks about, many of my teachers say, well, pen and pencil. But Sugata Mitra talks about an analogy of using a sword and a horse, which is pretty poignant out here in the Saudi desert. If you went back in time and told a teacher of young men, there will be a time when you won't use a sword and a horse, they would just laugh. But I'm telling teachers that you don't need to use a pen and pencil and paper, and they're laughing at me. How could you not use a pen and pencil and paper? Well, that's not how they record things. That's not how they find things. And it's infinitely more savable to use a cloud rather than a notebook, which is going to be trampled on anyways in the halls. And ask a student, when did you read a book last? Most of my students, they don't even know what a book is.
Right.
I'm wondering, though, I've just gotten my first iPhone. I resisted for a long time. I've had it about 3 weeks, and I'm still learning how to use it. So all of my students have smartphones, and they do things like take pictures of homework assignments or things on the board. But I know the way these students lack organization in their binders. They can never, ever find anything that I ask them to look for. If I give them a handout one day, and then 3 days later I ask them to find the handout, they can't do it. So they don't impose any system of organization on their binder. So what I want to know is, what about all that stuff they put in their phones? Is that organized for them, or does that depend on their imposing some kind of organization on it, because if it depends on that, I am quite sure that they're not doing it. And can they ever find that thing that they took a picture of off the board again? Just wondering.
That's a good question. I would argue that they're not. They're not particularly adept at navigating through their files as if they create files. They just use the default storage device that's on the app. But I would argue that they're much more ambidextrous with what's on their device than they would be with paper, which is ironic. Yeah, I have the same issue as well. If we have them, even if we punch it, three-hole punch it, give them the binder, they lose it. They just put it in there.
I gave up requiring the binders. I gave up the three-hole punching because they just throw everything in the same thing. They have two classes and everything is all mixed up together. You know, my class is reading and writing and grammar and vocabulary, and they can't even put things into 4 different categories. And I'm not just talking about the Saudis here. I'm talking about the students in general. In a class of 10, there will be 2 who are well organized, and the rest are just totally confused.
Can I tell a quick story?
Please.
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching for a month, mostly 14-year-olds going into 9th grade, and the class was geometry, which is hard to do in 4 weeks, so it was bits and pieces. So I was giving them Xeroxed chapters from a book about exploring geometry with a piece of software, and having them go at their own pace. And in the second week, bright student from Illinois told me I was not teaching him. And I think I partly embarrassed him by asking him to pull out the chapter, the Xerox chapter that I'd given him, and it was in, you know, it was 20 pages stapled together, and they were all separate in his backpack. So it may have been embarrassing that situation happened in front of other people. But what he was mostly upset about was I wasn't being a didactic teacher standing in front of the room teaching everybody at the same time. I was letting them go individually using software. And he was so upset at me. You know, I wasn't doing my job, was his feeling. And despite the fact that he had learned things about geometry, you know, he could tell me the definitions of certain things, he felt that he had taught himself that, and I didn't. Right. And he switched classes. He was so upset that I wasn't, you know, quote, being a teacher. And what was interesting was there was a fair number of international students, and they had no problem with it. The American students in my, you know, small data set were the ones who objected to my not doing what they were experienced at, which is, you know, tell me what I need to know, I'll study for the test, and then I'll get an A, and that's how school works. And I was making them uncomfortable, and they were uncomfortable, and they wanted out, and they left. And it was really interesting because the international students, some of them Americans living in other countries, they were fine with what I did. And I can't say it broke down to Americans versus other, but it was really interesting to be told, you know, you aren't teaching me.
I agree with Teresa that that's partly learning styles and it's partly expectations, and you know,
right.
People do well in different situations, as you know. So I don't think there is going to be a one-size-fits-all.
Oh no.
But when we put the student in the responsible, you know, in the driver's seat, basically, I guess we have to tell them what we're doing and why we're doing it, and can't expect them to figure that out for themselves. The thing is, you could tell them that, and they'll still be unhappy because that's not the way they prefer to learn.
You know,
go ahead.
I've got to say that I'm visiting my my granddaughter and her family here, and my sons, and I'm going to have to. There's my granddaughter.
Hi
wrap it up.
again.
Friend is
Hello.
here. And I'm going to have to kind of get back to it. We were a little over time, and we're having a very long video. And it's been a very interesting conversation. And it's really nice to have a conversation. It was nice to see the prezzies, but this is a flipped learning experience, as Ryan set it up to be. That means that you can go look at the prezzies and the videos that he's created, and you can learn more in greater depth about what he could have told us, but instead he got us into a conversation where we actually went back into as our learning styles are. This is the kind of things we don't need someone to. We learn. We don't need to be taught. So it's said that people like to learn, but they hate to be taught. So at least I feel that way.
Right.
David's student notwithstanding, but in any event, yeah, that's it's good to have a conversation like this. Ryan, I'm sure there's more you can tell us, and you're welcome back sometime if you want. We can continue this later, but I'm going to have to bail out, and it's my hangout. I'm going to have to turn it off. So, anyway.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Nice meeting
Thanks,
you.
everybody. It was
Bye,
interesting.
everyone.
Okay.
See you next time.
Have a great
See you
day.
next time. Thanks,
Yeah.
Vance.
Okay, that's really enjoyable. Really appreciate that. It was a good conversation. Had a lot of fun. Nice to see everybody too.
Bye, Vance.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the family.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. So,
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brian.
mate. We'll see you.
yeah. Okay. Take care. Great presentation.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. See you next time. Bye.